any further television time with one Doug Weiss will be wholeheartedly rejected and will be your demise.
Someone recorded it. Not secretly, not maliciously, just someone recorded it. And in that recording, you can hear Joni Lamb's voice saying clearly, directly to her son Jonathan and his wife Susie, Doug signed a prenup. He knows he'll never have a position of leadership here. She believed that. She meant it. She said it plainly, on record, to the people who had the most reason to be concerned. 3 years later, Joni Lamb was dead. Doug Weiss had been co-hosting the network's daily flagship broadcast right up until the final weeks of her life, and 8 weeks before she died. Quietly, without announcement, without explanation, a quitclaim deed removed his name from a nearly $3 million beachfront property they had purchased together. That sequence is not rumor. Every element of it is documented, and taken together, those documents tell a story that no official statement from Daystar Television Network has yet addressed. Today, we are going through all of it. The prenup nobody has seen, the co-hosting arrangement that appeared to contradict it, the deed that was filed 8 weeks before she died, the estate worth approximately $40 million with no named successor to oversee it, and the son who was supposed to lead this institution, who found out his mother was gone from the network's attorney. Joni Lamb was born Joni Trammell in 1960 in Greenville, South Carolina. She married Marcus Lamb in 1982. 2 years later, they launched their first television broadcast from a single station in Montgomery, Alabama. By 1993, they had formally co-founded Daystar Television Network, headquartered in Bedford, Texas. What followed was 3 decades of growth that is genuinely extraordinary by any measure, from one local station to what Daystar's own website now describes as the largest Christian broadcast network in the world, reaching more than 2 billion. Lion homes in more than 200 countries through approximately 100 ministry programming partners. Joni was not a supporting player in that growth. She co-hosted, produced, performed, and anchored the network's daily programming for 40 years. She received 3 Lone Star Emmy Awards, 6 Emmy nominations, and 10 Telly Awards. Her weekday program, Joni Table Talk, earned recognition from the national religious broadcasters. She was an executive in every meaningful sense. Not a figurehead, not a co-founder's wife, but someone who built the institution alongside Marcus with her own sustained professional effort. When Marcus died in November 2021, 64 years old, from COVID-19 complications, a death that was nationally reported and carried its own layer of painful public irony given the network's prominent role in promoting vaccine skepticism, Joni stepped into sole leadership of a billion-dollar institution. She had never run it alone, and in the space created by that grief, something began that would eventually fracture everything. The timeline that matters. Marcus Lamb died on November 30th, 2021. On January 27th, 2022, 57 days later, Doug Weiss filed for divorce from his wife Lisa, with whom he had built Heart to Heart Counseling Center in Colorado Springs and shared more than 30 years of marriage. That divorce was finalized on May 31st, 2022. On February 7th, 2023, Weiss publicly announced his engagement to Joni Lamb. They married on June 10th, 2023. Less than 18 months had passed since Marcus's death, less than 14 months since Weiss's divorce was finalized. Those are not allegations. Those are dates drawn from court records and public announcements, documented by the Roy's report and independently verifiable. Weiss was not a stranger to Daystar before any of this. He had appeared on the network as a guest bee. Before Marcus's death, working to build a sustained television presence for his counseling ministry, by his own documented statements, he had invested significant time and ministry funds toward that goal. He had prayed specifically for airtime on Daystar. He had obtained it, the professional record. Before the marriage, before the co-hosting, before any of the events that made this story national news, Doug Weiss had a documented professional record worth examining. Colorado's professional licensing boards had issued him 2 formal letters of admonition. The first, in November 2002, found that Weiss had misrepresented his credentials by using the protected professional title of Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist, a designation that requires a specific license he did not hold at the time. The second, in November 2010, found that during a 3-day marital counseling intensive, Weiss had not attempted to save the couple's relationship. Instead, the board found he had directed both partners to write anger letters, write goodbye letters to their marriage and their shared dreams, discuss divorce, and plan the division of marital assets. The board concluded he had created more adversity and alienation between the couple than had existed before they arrived. He accepted that order. These are public records, available through Colorado's licensing database, documented and published by the Roys Report in their 2024 investigation. 7 former female clients of heart-to-heart counseling subsequently gave accounts to investigative journalist Julie Roys, describing experiences they said left them more damaged than before they had sought help. Shamed, blamed, subjected to polygraph protocols that independent polygraph professionals said did not meet industry standards. Those accounts were published in 2025. Weiss disputed them. No substantive response was provided by Daystar. This is the man Joni Lamb married, the man she told her son would never hold a position of leadership at the network they had built. What she said, and what followed. In a recorded conversation that has since been heard by thousands of people across the Christian community, Joni Lamb looked at Jonathan and Susie and said plainly, "Doug signed a prenup. He knows he'll never have a position of leadership here." She also published a formal letter on Daystar's official blog in July 2023. In it, she stated in her own words, "I am still and will continue to be the active president of Daystar. I take that responsibility very seriously." She was saying, "Nothing has changed. Doug understands his role. You have nothing to fear." What happened next is documented on Daystar's own website. Doug Weiss became the co-host of Ministry Now, the network's daily live flagship broadcast. Not a guest appearance, not an occasional contribution. The co-host, present daily, on air, before a global audience, at the center of the organization's most visible programming. Whether that arrangement constitutes a position of leadership within the network she had told Jonathan he would never hold is a question that depends on what the prenuptial agreement actually says. That agreement has never been made public. No one outside of the legal documents can say with certainty what its terms cover. What can be said is that a co-hosting role on the network's flagship daily broadcast is, by any observable definition, a sustained position of influence within that organization. And that position existed, visibly and publicly, for nearly 3 years, right up until the weeks before Joni died. The financial picture. The financial record during those years was the subject of sustained investigative reporting. The Roys Report documented through internal Daystar records that Joni's annual compensation increased by approximately 140% following Marcus's death, surpassing $1 million annually by fiscal year 2023. Trinity Foundation, which has decades of experience monitoring the finances of televangelist ministries, tracked the Daystar ministry aircraft, a 1997 Gulfstream GV, and calculated that it made approximately 24 round trips between Fort Worth and Colorado Springs, where Weiss was based, and 13 round trips between Fort Worth and Destin, Florida, where Joni and Weiss had purchased a beachfront condominium together in September 2023 for approximately $2.9 million. Trinity Foundation estimated those flights cost approximately $769,000 in ministry funds. The Roys Report separately documented more than $100,000 in charges to a Daystar corporate credit card at a luxury resort in Los Cabos, Mexico, charges that Joni publicly denied were connected to her honeymoon, but which the corporate card records themselves appeared to directly contradict. Property records further documented, as the Roys Report published in a separate investigation, that Joni personally owned 7 homes across 4 states with a combined value of approximately $11.7 million. Daystar's parent organization, Word of God Fellowship Incorporated, is classified as a church entity. It does not file a standard Form 990, the financial disclosure document required of most nonprofits. Its finances are, as investigators have consistently noted, not subject to the same public scrutiny as those of other large charitable organizations. Donors give an estimated $35 million annually to the network, with no ability to verify from public filings exactly how those funds are allocated. The deed. 8 weeks before she died. In March 2026, approximately 8 weeks before Joni Lamb died, a quit-claim deed was filed. The document transferred the nearly $3 million beachfront condo, Minium in Destin, Florida, the property she and Doug Weiss had purchased together in September 2023, into Joni's personal, revocable trust. Doug Weiss's name was removed from the deed. A quitclaim deed does not happen accidentally. It requires preparation. It requires legal counsel. It requires execution and formal filing. Joni Lamb was an experienced businesswoman who had managed an organization with hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, 7 personally owned properties across 4 states, and decades of institutional financial oversight. She knew exactly what that document meant when she signed it. She signed it 8 weeks before she died. No one from her inner circle has publicly explained why. Trinity Foundation, in their post-death analysis, identified 3 honest possibilities that the documented facts allow. The first, the original arrangement remains exactly as she described it. The prenuptial agreement is intact, and the deed is consistent with a broader estate plan whose full structure the public cannot yet see. The second, Joni made adjustments during the marriage, voluntarily, with full awareness, recognizing that circumstances had evolved from what she had originally anticipated, and spending her final weeks making corrections through legal instruments. The third, Joni recognized something she had not fully seen before, that her own reassurances to Jonathan had not translated into the reality she had promised, that the boundary she had described was not holding, and that the quitclaim deed was her way of drawing one when she could no longer hold it in person. None of those 3 explanations has been confirmed. All 3 have been raised by people who genuinely loved Joni Lamb and are trying honestly to make sense of how her story ended. The son who was supposed to lead it. To understand why all of these documents matter, you have to understand who Jonathan Lamb is within this institution's history. Marcus Lamb, before his death, left a written email directive. Trinity Foundation published it. It reads directly, "So if I precede Joni in death, then my directive is that Joni will replace me as the head of Daystar. I further direct that if Joni passes or retires, then Jonathan Lamb will become the head of Daystar." That document is not legally binding. Daystar's board has full legal authority to appoint whoever they choose, but it is the expressed final written wish of the man who co-built the institution over nearly 4 decades. According to Denise Boggs, a counseling ministry leader who has spoken publicly about a conversation she had with Marcus in his final days, he asked his daughter Rachel to call her and have her record his wishes for the family and for the network. Those wishes named Jonathan. What followed after Marcus's death is not disputed. Jonathan was placed on a performance improvement plan. His salary was reduced, his company car was removed. A GPS tracker was discovered in that car, documented through security camera footage Jonathan himself reviewed, with expense records showing the trackers had been purchased in October 2023, contradicting Daystar's subsequent claim that all company vehicles had been tracked since Marcus's death. Jonathan and Susie were followed by a private investigator. They filmed the incident and provided footage to the Roy's report. A Daystar attorney told Jonathan at a board meeting, on recording, "You don't have the right to go challenge the authority of your organization." When Jonathan refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement, he was stripped of his executive role. On November 16, 2024, a security guard arrived at Jonathan and Susie's home, wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a firearm, to deliver a termination letter. And when Joni Lamb died on May 7, 2026, Jonathan was not called. Susie posted publicly that they were down the road within easy reach and that nobody contacted them as she was dying. The call Jonathan eventually received came from the network's attorney, informing him his mother was already gone. What remains unanswered? Daystar's website now shows Rachel Lamb Brown and Josh Brown as central to the network's on-air presence. Doug Weiss continues to appear in the on-air world Joni built. Jonathan remains outside the institution. No individual has been publicly named as the network's new president. The board's statement after Joni's death referred to a leadership team without identifying a single member. Trinity Foundation submitted direct written questions to Daystar, asking who now leads the organization and whether an executive search was planned. No public response has been issued. The prenuptial agreement has never been made public. The quit-claim deed is filed. The estate, estimated at approximately $40 million, has no publicly announced succession plan. The governance structure that shields Daystar from standard financial transparency remains in place. The people who gave money to this network, $35 million annually, by available estimates, have no public accounting of what is happening inside the institution their giving sustains. Joni Lamb built something genuinely significant. That is not in question, and it deserves to be said plainly. She was a broadcaster of real ability, a builder of real vision, and a woman of publicly demonstrated resilience through some of the most difficult chapters any person could be asked to navigate. She was also a mother who died without the reconciliation the people closest to her had prayed for, and the institution she led responded to her death by keeping her son from her bedside, managing his presence at her memorial like a damage control operation, and leaving every question about its own future unanswered. Both of those things are true simultaneously. And the community that loved her, and that continues to financially sustain her network, deserves answers to the questions that neither of those truths resolves. Here is the question I want to leave you with, Dai, and it is not rhetorical. If you were sitting on Daystar's board today, what is the first thing you would do? Not the statement you would issue, not the press release, the actual first decision. Because the answer to that question tells you more about what an institution genuinely values than any tribute or broadcast or carefully worded announcement ever could. Drop your answer in the comments. This community takes this conversation seriously, and I read every response. If you are not subscribed, do it now. Turn on notifications. The Daystar succession story is still unfolding. The estate questions, the board decisions, the leadership announcements, and when those chapters develop, you will want the sourced account, not the rumor. Thank you for watching this through to the end. Stay discerning.